So I wanted to first look at how coal impacted the economy. Because economic performance and social issues like health and family structure are inseparably linked. When you have a healthy economy, it often supports a healthy population. In order to do that, I wanted to look at several characteristics of coal as an industry that will help us to determine whether or not it benefited the economy. First, the coal industry did provide high wages to its workers eventually. Pretty much up until the 1940s, the coal mines were not unionized, which meant that coal owners could get away with paying inadequate wages to miners for their long, grueling shifts in the underground mines. Only after mines began to unionize did wages rise, and coal mining continues to remain a high-wage profession today. Coal also supports jobs in other related industries like energy generation, steel manufacturing, and chemical processing. So when the coal industry is thriving, jobs appear in these other industries and they thrive. However, since coal is a natural resource, it is often subject to boom and bust cycles, which essentially means that sometimes the industry is very prosperous and sometimes it fizzles out. So coal is subject to demand, and when demand falls, jobs disappear. And demand is it fluctuates greatly, so especially with the rise of other energy sources, coal has kind of fallen out of favor, and as a result, jobs have disappeared. And kind of in the same way, coal and the prosperity of the coal industry depends on the availability of the resource. So when the coal mines run out of coal, inevitably jobs will disappear. The coal industry also tends to crowd out new business initiatives. So historically, when a coal company would come into a new region, they would either create their own new community and economy, or they would kind of rope all the local economic functions into the orbit of the coal industry. And so as a result, people had very little incentive to start their own businesses. And when you have an economy that discourages new business startups, the economy often fails to diversify. And when you have an economy that is not diverse, it always hurts the local people. And the majority of coal owners lived in other regions. This meant that much of the wealth that was generated from coal left and enriched the pockets of distant corporate owners. And so Central Appalachia, despite being a region that was very rich in natural resources, ended up not retaining much of the wealth that was generated from those resources. Instead, it left and it was not reinvested in the local economy. So while coal did eventually provide high wages, both the instability of the region and its domination of the regional economy prevented it from bringing widespread economic benefit to the region. So although coal did not observably benefit the economy, what about the development of company towns? Coal owners built these towns to house their workforce and keep them close to the mines. And on initial glance, it might seem like because before the coal industry swept into the region, many of the families that moved there were formerly small farmers. And so maybe upon initial glance, it might seem like this new infrastructure would have benefited them. But the answer I found to my question is not really, and for a few reasons. First is that coal mines were often the only major employer in rural mountain regions. So when families moved into the company town, they were often joining an economy that was completely controlled by the coal company. These companies often controlled every financial and sometimes political decision that their employees would make. So as a result, families who moved to these coal towns often failed to realize financial independence. Coal miners who lived in these towns often had to work long hours in dangerous conditions just to scrape by. Working in the mines for long periods of time, you're subject to breathe in clouds of underground dust particles, and over time doing so contributes to a condition known as black lung, which is actually the most common occupational illness in America. So in order to fight for better safety conditions, miners would unionize. The coal owners often resisted these efforts to unionize, though, and so as a result, only some mines developed safer working conditions. Company owners were also looking to build these towns as fast as possible and in order to maximize profit. And so they often failed to provide adequate housing for their workers. These houses often lacked basic amenities like plumbing, electricity, and heat. In a 1923 government survey of thousands of company houses in eastern Kentucky, only 14% had running water, 2.4% had bathtubs, and 3% had flushable toilets, which notably is still a higher percentage of flushable toilets than some buildings on campus.